Yes, Mr. Chair, Vice President.
Before we approve the minutes, we've got, as I understand, our last group from the leadership class, and let me ask you guys to stand up and introduce yourselves. Tell us where you work and how long you've been here at KUB, if you don't mind.
Yes, thank you. I'm Doug Reese, and I work in the procurement department. I supervise the purchasing and contracts group, and I've been here 7.5 years.
Great.
And Doug is a lone soldier.
You're the only one. Well, they would save the best for last, right?
That's right.
You know, this has been having the people in your class and you be here has been a great thing for us. I mean, I think we enjoy getting to meet you, and hopefully you get some benefit out of watching how this process works, as exciting as it is. And so both you and the rest of your class, we wish you all good luck on all of this. This has been a good thing for us, and hopefully it's a good thing for you guys. All right, so everybody should have gotten a copy of the minutes. Is there a motion regarding approval of the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Our first official action is consideration of nominees for the expiring term of Commissioner Cannell, and we will have a report from the nominating committee.
Thank you. This year's nominating process for the term that will begin January 1st, 2015 began in January of this year when the online application became available on KUB's website. The committee then met in August, and an advertisement ran in the News Sentinel that same month. The committee discussed submitted applications and identified qualified applicants that would be interviewed. And by charter, we are required to provide the mayor with at least 5 nominees for each commissioner vacancy. So after those meetings and interviews, the nominating committee recommends the following 5 nominees: Jerry Askew, Randy Gibson, John Kalick, Melissa Parker, and John Warden. And that's the report.
Okay. That's the recommendation from the nominating committee, and we will need to have an election on ballots. And Mark, will you conduct that election?
Yes, sir. Commissioners, as a reminder, you do vote by written ballot. And once you've completed the ballot, please remember to sign your name at the bottom of the page, the bottom of the ballot. Please vote for at least 5 candidates, and you may vote from those nominees recommended by the nominating committee, or you may vote for another applicant, or you may write in a candidate if you wish. And the names of the individuals receiving the majority of the votes, the 5, will be submitted to the mayor.
While we're waiting for the results, Joe will still be with us for the next 2 meetings, so not getting rid of us quite yet. So, you have results?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the following individuals have received the majority of the votes: Jerry Askew, Randall Gibson, John Kalick, Melissa Parker, and John Warden.
Okay, great, thank you. These findings will be submitted to the mayor. I assume that will happen today, and then she will have 45 days within which to pick and recommend to City Council to approve. We will take over at Next order, business resolution 1317, authorizing the restructuring and extension of the terms of contracts for the purchase of capacity for the transportation and storage of gas, natural gas from Tennessee Gas Pipeline Company of East Tennessee Natural Gas. Is the report going to be shorter than the title?
Yes. Guaranteed. Commissioners, you're aware that each year at this time we give you a winter update regarding our gas supply and what we expect for our customers' bills related to our gas business. But today we're combining that report with some good news related to the negotiations we've just completed with our gas suppliers related to transportation as well as supply. So I recognize Jamie Davis, who's a manager, as well as the assistant to the vice president and CFO.
Thank you, Ms. Roach. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Pleased to go over some of this information with you today. I think we've got some good news as it relates to the projection for our customer bills, as well as some of the terms and conditions we've been negotiating with our interstate pipeline contractors. Those contracts have been coming up in a year from now, and as such, in advance of that, we've been negotiating those terms, and we'll be sharing with that in a minute. But let's jump right in and take a look at where we think that our winter bills will be for our residential customers this year. There are certain impacts that will always influence our bills as we begin to project those. And this year, too, really kind of come to the top as far as what has influenced those projections, one of which are the rate increases that this board passed in June. Our electric customers, our residential customers, have seen a $1 increase on their customer charge beginning with their August bills. Our natural gas customers will see that here in a couple of weeks with their November bills. But having said that, the real driver for these projections this upcoming winter is consumption. And as you all remember, in the not too distant past, we had a very cold winter. It seems like we just warmed up. And because of that winter being so cold, it was 4% colder than what we project as normal, or what is considered normal. And as you recall, that winter was only one of 3 over the last 20 years that was colder than normal. So when we project a given sales pattern or consumption pattern, we base that upon normal. And the reason being is the weather's hard to predict. Some forecast services will say above, some below, some on, and historically we've just used normal as a baseline measure in that regard. So all things considered equal, a very cold winter last year to a normal projected winter this year, consumption will be down. And you can see that in what we do project our energy bills to be for our residential customers, and that's generally, that's in large regard to the normal weather. As you can see on the left there of our electric bills, we project those to be on a monthly basis $3 lower. You can see that a typical customer last winter, their typical bill was $125. We project that to be $3 lower to $122. On the natural gas side, we project that average for our typical customer to be at $4 lower per month from last year. In that regard, the actual bill was $106, and that in our projected be at $102, again driven by a normal consumption pattern in that regard. And having said that, we realize that some customers will still have questions. We realize some of them will have high bill inquiries, and as a result also sometimes a difficulty paying their bill. And as in always, KUB stands ready to communicate to those customers, inform them of options that they have, as well as direct them towards assistance. As you see on the screen are a number of tools in our toolkit that we use to assist those customers. Our customer service staff stands ready to provide information through our website, through bill stuffers, through phone calls to our phone center, on energy saving information, on conservation, on ways that we as customers can save money in our utility bill. As far as payment plans and billing plans, if you recall, our new levelized billing plan went into effect this past year, replacing our balance pay plan. That gives a customer an option of smoothing out those peaks. It uses a 12-month rolling average to kind of levelize the amount that they're paying to us and kind of smooth out those humps of our heating seasons. If a customer has trouble paying bills, as always, our customer counselors are there to help them guide them towards assistance. Of course, we're very familiar with Project Help. Other charitable agencies step in and help for bill assistance, along with other charitable organizations like churches, as well as governmental agencies like CAC are there as well too. And somewhat of an option that's fairly new is our KUB gift cards. That's been utilized where folks, families, friends, neighbors have wanted to help out others, or just to simply give them a gift of helping pay their utility bills, and that's an option as well too. So as you can see, a number of different options that customers can reach out to KUB to get information and also seek assistance on their bills. So again, the headline on our winter bills, we believe that those will be lower year to year, and again, primarily driven by a lower than projected consumption from last year, but yet normal. Kind of shifting gears a little bit, part of the winter update too is to talk about the compliance with Resolution 970. And Resolution 970 was passed in 1998. It governs our authority as staff to be able to, what we can contract for as it relates to the purchase and transportation and storage of natural gas. It also provides for that on an annual basis that we'll come back and let you know kind of how we're doing in that compliance. So overall, I'm pleased to say that we are in complete compliance with Resolution 970, and I'll go into a little bit of detail there with that. Our purchasing authority is established by 970 is 160,000 decatherms a day. Currently, we have under contract an ability to transport to Knoxville 157,400, so under that 160 and in compliance. Also, from an operational perspective, that number is still a good number for our sales. Even with this past winter on January the 6th, we set a new peak of right over 133,000 decatherms. So that 160 still allows us to be able to deliver on the coldest day. 970 allows for us to contract for up to 5 million decatherms in inventory volumes. Currently, we are contracted for 4.1 million. That storage plays a real critical role during the winter. We'll talk about that in just a second. 970 also allows us sales authority as it relates to excess capacity and excess gas. And the only activity we've had there this year and in prior years is in our capacity. During the summer times in which we're not utilizing all of our capacity, we'll release that capacity or sell it to other parties, other suppliers that can use that capacity for their business purposes. That's a win-win. It helps them out and that they get that extra capacity as well as it saves our customers dollars for capacity that would otherwise be idle. This past year, about $170,000 worth of that capacity sales has occurred, and that's pretty consistent with our prior years. And those savings flow back to our customers in that regard. As far as authority goes with 970, there's certain authority passed to staff that I've talked about, as well as certain authority that the board has retained. And in short, the authority provided to staff is that they can sign contracts of up to 2 years or less for our max capacity. So for that 157,000 that we currently have, if a term of 2 years or less, they can sign for that. But beyond 2 and no less than 6, there's a volumetric restriction there. And you can see that on the screen at 15,000 decatherms a day. So for anything above 2 years and less than 6 over that 15,000, the board has retained that approval right there, as well as the storage contracts of up to 6 years for firm withdrawal rights up to 10,000. So as we have talked about, as we renegotiated these contracts for our maximum amounts for a 5-year term, we must come back to you, and thus the purpose of Resolution 1317 today, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But our only contracting activity this year that we've done inside those limits that staff is allowed to is we've entered a 5-year supply deal with BP Energy. It's a little unique in one regard. You can see that we're going to take 5,000 to 7,000 decatherms a day, depending on what time of the year, a little more in winter, as you might expect. But this will be our first arrangement in which the pipeline or the supplier will deliver this gas on Texas Eastern. Traditionally, most of our gas delivered on Tennessee Gas Pipeline or East Tennessee Natural Gas Pipeline. This will be on Texas Eastern, and as such provides for us a little bit of operational flexibility as well as a little bit of a financial advantage in that we're not using our Tennessee capacity to get it to Knoxville. So a little bit of cost savings there, so we think that's a win-win. And diversity is important, and that supply there, if there happen to be a constraint on Tennessee or a constraint of the Appalachian region, that is a good example of how that gas might get to Knoxville via another pipeline. And as you can see, we have a pretty diverse portfolio. All of our eggs are not in one basket. We've got different suppliers, different pipelines, different regions even within those pipelines, different storage areas, both kind of in that, what I'll call that upper Appalachian region or even down to the Gulf of Mexico. And that gives us flexibility to be able to deliver on those coldest of days. We would never pull all these sources on any one given day, but it does help us a little bit of flexibility as we meet the demands. Now, I mentioned about storage a minute ago. That 4.1 million over that we have contracted for is very important in our supply. In any given 1 year, we'll bring about 10 million decatherms to Knoxville. And most of that, about 8 million of that will come during the winter months. And as you can see, that 4 million, about half of that 8 million, plays a real critical role in being able to meet our customers' needs in that regard. So thus the importance of that portion of our portfolio. Another very important portion of it of our program is our hedging program. And the aims and goals of that program have really not changed over the years. Its primary focus is to reduce price volatility in our gas prices. And over the years, we believe that has done a good job. And how we do that is we diversify the timing of when we purchase. we'll purchase and lock in particular hedges on our supply contracts, anywhere from 3 months to 12 months. And at any one given point in time, we want to be about 60% hedged. In other words, we have price certainty in that regard. And to kind of demonstrate that, you can see over history here from 2006 until what we project in July of next year, that over the course of the years, we believe the program has worked. Now, pre-2008, a little bit of note there, you can see the large spike on that. Of course, that was pre-recession, so demand was high. And Northeast gas, shale gas, had really not come on the scene yet. And that really was a big game changer in the natural gas market. But you can see or post-recession and post-Northeast gas arriving on the scene, our gas prices kind of hovered right around that $4. And so any volatility in our price, or any variation rather, in our price is really not due to gas prices itself. It's the program is working in that regard. So as we shift our focus to the proposal that before you all today in Resolution 1317, it would authorize staff to execute a number of different contracts underneath two particular pipeline companies in East Tennessee and Tennessee Natural Gas. Our East Tennessee contract is not changing virtually any at all. The number that you see on the screen there, the 157, our transport capacity, our withdrawal rights, and our storage capacity are very similar to what we have today. Matter of fact, exact. The term is over what staff is allowed to execute, and therefore the required authority requested from you today. But what did change is our Tennessee gas pipeline contracts, the pipeline that brings it from the Gulf of Mexico to East Tennessee Natural Gas. The new terms per this contract, we believe, will save our customers right at $3.8 million a year. We're very happy about that. We feel like that's a great news for KUB and for our customers. Now again, similarly to East Tennessee, the numbers there as far as the capacity and the storage didn't change. Those are all exactly the same as what we've had before, but what did change was the price. And there was one other minor change with storage. We've had a small market storage area up in the northeast that we're going to, or an Appalachian region rather, we're going to bring closer and down into Louisiana. But predominantly, what has driven this is the market itself. As that northeast gas has become available, the traditional pipeline capacity from the south and the Gulf that was required to get that supply up to the northeast markets is no longer required because the supply is closer to where it's being used. As a result, there's a little more supply on the pipeline. Market forces kind of step in and drive competition, and thus the price goes down. And so we're happy about that our customers will save that money. That'll boil down to about $2 a month on our typical residential customer bill. We'll flow that back through our purchase gas adjustment, which is our automatic mechanism that flows back changes in prices in that regard to our customers, so no board action is required for that. And of note, specific note, those savings will start next year as that contract comes into play. So that'll be November of 2015 before our customers start to see those savings in that regard. So again, for your consideration today is Resolution 1317, which requests your authorization to allow staff to enter into these contracts with East Tennessee and Tennessee Gas Pipeline, and upon passage, it'll be effective immediately. Any questions?
Only one question, and it's not about the contract there, it's about the early part of the presentation. Help me understand how you define a typical customer.
A typical customer, we have volumetric amounts, 1,000 kWh on the electric side, 565 therms, I believe it is, on the gas side. And that's what we have traditionally used as kind of a typical residential customer. Some will be more, some will be less, but that's what we've always used as a baseline.
And that's how we benchmark with our metrics.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
In order, Chairman, I move approve Resolution 1317.
Second. All right. A motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, Mr. Cullen, will you call the roll? Call the roll for a vote, please.
Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner Cannell, Commissioner Hamilton,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert,
Aye.
Commissioner Pennell, Commissioner Thompson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams. Resolution 1317 is passed.
Thank you. President's report.
Commissioners, it's my special privilege today to recognize two special guests. If you all would like to come up. Robbie Ansary is our customer manager with TVA, and he really helps us on a day-to-day basis serve our customers well. He does a great job for TVA, and our staff have a great relationship with him, so we're happy to have Robbie. And we're also happy to have Cindy Heron here. She's Vice President of Energy Right and Renewables, and they both want to say something to the KUB
the opportunity to be here today. We have two very special awards that we want to present to the KUB board today, and we're very honored and privileged that we can be here and be the TVA representatives presenting these awards. The first one that we're wanting to present to you is the 75th anniversary, recognizing you for 75 years of providing reliable and successful public service. This is presented on behalf of our TVA board, our CEO, Bill Johnson, Executive Vice President Van Wardlaw, and I'd like to just read it. The Tennessee Valley Authority Board of Directors Award presented to Knoxville Utilities Board for 75 years of partnership and outstanding contributions and service to the people of the Tennessee Valley. Thank you for your commitment to excellence. So we thank you. We want to go ahead and present this award.
Great. Robbie, thank you. We appreciate it. 75 years is a long time.
It is. You're looking for another 75.
Okay, sure. Great. Thanks, Ron.
75 years is a long time, and it's not anything we take lightly. And we thank you for allowing TVA to be your provider of your electricity. We also want to move to the next award, and I want to thank you for your commitment to offer energy efficiency solutions to the customers in the Knoxville area. And it's because of your commitment to these programs that we're able to have success in the Valley and offering energy efficiency and demand response programs. We've completed 6 years now of very successful programs, and it's because of your commitment and your partnership that we're able to be successful in these areas. We want to recognize KUB for being the top performer in several different areas, in fact 7. I'm going to name all of them. So the self-audit program, the in-home energy evaluation program, heat pump, manufacturing homes program, green power switch, the energy rights solutions for business, and another category called total program savings. In fact, KUB's programs alone saved over 20 million kilowatt hours of energy efficiency savings last year. So we thank you, because it's only through your commitment to your customers, through your commitment to offer these, that we're able to partner. So we thank KUB for that. I want to present this one, if this is okay. You can be with me, Robbie. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Let me just say that you want to get your picture and then talk about it.
Yeah, you go ahead. I just wanted everyone to know.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. We're partners with TVA and the opportunity to do these kind of programs with TVA for our customers is a great thing for everybody, and we appreciate all that you do. These are the people that really, you're giving it to the board right now, but it's all these people here and all the people at KUB that have made this all not only possible, but to be the best in these areas. So thank you.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. Tell Mr. Johnson thank you.
We will.
He's my neighbor. I'll just holler up the steps. Thank you when I see him. All right. Now, water strategy.
Commissioners, I just simply want to remind you that a part of our executive leadership development program are 3 strategic projects. Last month, you heard a report from the team with regard to the workforce strategy. Today, you're going to hear the report out from the water strategy team. So I'll recognize Susan Edwards and John Gresham, who is the manager of plans.
Commissioners, as you'll recall, we were before you last December to give you an update on where we were headed with this water strategy project. And at that time, we told you our mission was really to reassess our long-term strategy for providing high-quality and reliable service to our customers. That commitment's traditionally been met through excess capacity. We have excess capacity in our treatment facilities at MBW, in our storage facilities there, and on our system. And that strategy has served us well for over 75 years. But it's always good to sort of step back and take a look at that occasionally and make sure that that strategy is going to continue to serve us well into the future, especially given some of the challenges that we see on our systems and that we've seen other systems face. So that's what this group that you see listed here has been working on for the past almost a year. And I'll recognize Eddie Black, Mike Bowen over there in the back of the room, John, who you'll hear from in a moment, Mike Patterson is also here, and Mark Walker. All of them worked on this along with some of our engineering staff who's had a role in this over time, and consultants as well. When we started this project, and you may remember this slide, we really looked at two paths. We said one option for making sure that we have that reliable service is to consider whether it's time for KUB to have a second water treatment plant. That gives you that redundancy that if anything happened at MBW, you have another plant ready to go and pick up that load. But we also recognize the potential for an alternate solution that might include a mix of different elements. And you can see some of those things that we were thinking about at that time. What we're recommending to you today is that we fall out on the something else option. We are recommending that we do a combination of efforts, and that's what we're going to share with you in this presentation. Our fundamental recommendation at the heart of it is to invest in redundancy at our existing plant, at the Mark B. Whitaker plant, instead of building a second plant elsewhere. And we based all of our assumptions on the projected demand of 40 million gallons per day. In other words, if we were going to build a second plant, we would want to build a plant of that size. And as we looked into the options that we had at MBW, we realized we could achieve that redundant capacity at our current site and do so at a much improved price, as you'll see in a moment. We also think that improving redundancy at the current site allows us to phase those improvements in over time. So it's not something we have to do all at once. We have the ability to spread that over the course of 15 years is our current recommendation. Another element of our recommendation is to expand our interconnections with other utilities. As you're aware, we have interconnections with the surrounding utility districts today that can provide us approximately 2.3 million gallons per day of extra flow when we need it. Now, clearly, that doesn't get us to 40 million gallons, and we wouldn't expect that interconnections could get us all the redundancy we need, but we do think there are opportunities for improving that, adding to that capacity in a significant way, and that is another contingency that we think is an important part of this recommendation. Bottom line, the changes that we're going to talk with you about today are considerable savings over the construction of the new plant. When we talked with our consultants about how much it would cost to build a 40 million gallon per day plant somewhere else on our system, and then make sure that water could make it into our distribution system, they quoted us a price of nearly $250 million. So it's a significant, considerable expense. The recommendation we're bringing to you today comes in at significantly less than $100 million. We feel that's a material difference, and we feel like the recommendation that we're making achieves the reliability goals we want to at that significantly lower price. So, obviously, we looked at the pros and cons of what we're talking to you about, and we felt that the pros outweigh the cons, and you can see by this list that is a longer list. When we look at this approach, we talked about the things that we have at MBW, what are the process elements at MBW, and things that could go wrong there, how can we address those? And we found that with the projects that we're recommending, we can make that plant more resilient today and meet those reliability needs on site. So we're mitigating those primary risk factors there that we have. We also believe that this approach will provide us some additional operational flexibility just day to day. As I mentioned, we use our excess capacity to help us manage reliability on our system. So if we need to take the plant down for some sort of service, we have excess storage capacity at the plant that can continue to provide water to our customers until that work is done. The improvements we're recommending here would maintain that ability, but also add redundancy within the system so you can maybe take just a portion of the plant offline and continue production on the rest of the facility. So that just gives us another layer of redundancy in addition to what we already have. I talked about the lower capital cost up front, and that's surely important, and the biggest reason is because of the impact on rates. Anything that we can do to minimize that upfront cost and also spread it out over time means that we can have less of an impact on our customers, so that's always important. In addition to the capital costs, we are also recognizing a savings in our operation and maintenance costs. There will be costs associated with maintaining these new facilities, but we will not require a whole duplicate staff to operate another plant. If we built another plant elsewhere, we have to basically replicate the staff we have at NBW, operate that. By putting all these things at one site, we have the ability to leverage the skills and abilities of our existing staff in that one place. So we think that's a significant pro. And then finally, anytime you want to locate a big facility in a sort of an industrial facility like a water plant anywhere, it requires that you find a good site, it has to be permitted, and we also have to take into account the impact that has on the surrounding community. By locating at NBW, we don't have to do that at all. That site is already sited, permitted, and it's well buffered on all sides from people that might be impacted by it. So we felt that there was a good long list of pros for this approach. We recognize there are also some drawbacks, and the number one among those is the continued reliance on a single site. I think when we started this, it seemed sort of, well, what are the things that can go wrong? If something terrible happened to the footprint of the plant, some disaster that took out everything on the site, which would have to be a very big thing. Or maybe a more likely scenario that you have a problem with your water source. When you have all of your resources at that one site, that is a risk. What we found is that one of the elements of our recommendation is to add a new intake to our existing plant that can draw from 2 other water sources. So in doing that, that really makes the rest of this work, because we are mitigating that risk, which we think is one of the more primary risks of having one site, and really makes the rest of this work really well. So John will be getting into more of those details about how that works, but we felt like that even though that is still a risk, we've done taken that into account and tried to really address the most important part of that. The second potential con is that when you are making major capital improvements at an operating plant, you have the potential that you can impact the operations of that plant. Anytime you're doing big construction next to something like that, we recognize that there's a risk that we might impact that process. But the good news there is we are used to doing that. We already do that at NEW. In fact, as you know, we just recently completed the construction of our low service pump station, which takes water out of the river and starts it into the treatment process. We were able to do that without impacting customers at all, and that is the definition of a significant project. So those are the things that we recognized and took into account in making our recommendation, but we think that they are manageable risks, and especially given the benefits of the approach, we think that they are reasonable. So at a high level, that's the recommendation, how we've come to it. What I'd like to do now is ask John to come up, and he's going to talk in more detail about the individual elements of the plan and how those play into our.
Made a bad error letting an engineer come talk about technical stuff. We're going to be here a while, so get comfortable. I will say this has been an interesting project to be on, and at the end of the day, it's really not landed where I initially thought it would land, so there's been a lot of good conversations. And we won't get into too much detail here, but once we made the decision to go down the path of something else, that's when the game really changed for us. So once we made that decision, we got back with our engineering and operations team that was working on the technical stuff for us, and we asked them to assess the existing water plant. And we really wanted them to do a risk assessment, take a good hard look at the plant. I think it's important that you remember through the rest of this conversation, it's about that 40 million gallon a day capacity. It's about reliability, resilience, and those things. It's really not about capacity, and I think we talked about this last time. We've got ample capacity as we sit here right now to provide water for the foreseeable future for our customers. So this is really about reliability. So we had that team go through the plant. You can see the number of things. We won't go through all of those, but basically from the intake, the source, the raw water product we use, they began there all the way to the transmission pipes to get water out to our customers. And they took a look at each one of these items, and they were looking at risk and potential and magnitude and process constraints and all of the things that are important for us to be able to produce a firm supply of 40 million gallons a day. So that's really what they looked at here. What that landed us on was that they identified a number of very specific projects that we'll talk about in a moment that'll help us to accomplish that redundancy and capacity in these areas. So, for effect here, this is a simplified diagram of our current configuration of the water plant. So over on here, that's the Tennessee River where we get our water. We start with that intake. Here's the low service Susan was talking about. And if you'll note, this is very linear back out to our distribution system. Here's the interconnects we talk about that feeds that system. So this process has served us well for many decades. There's redundancy in some of these boxes, which helps us, but at the end of the day, it's very, very sequential, very sequential. And we count on storage in our system and at the plant to get us through times of maintenance or fixing problems. So let's spin ahead to our proposal today. And you see a much more complicated drawing here. Your sequential plant's still here. It's still here, but we've added these orange and blue areas with redundancy. So you see a distribution structure here and here. You see new clarifiers being added here, new filters, a new clear well. These lines, if you'll note, there's no longer a sequence. We can take water this way, or we can take water this way, or we can bypass that. We can move around the plant. So at the end of the day, what this is building for us is operational flexibility at the plant. So we can deal with this unit being out of service, or that unit being out of service, or having to do a repair over here. Allows us to continue to produce water. So no longer are we having to land the plane to work on it. We're able to better fly the plane, continue to provide service, and keep moving forward. So hopefully that represents what we're trying to accomplish here. Now, Susan talked about our intake, and you'll note here a new intake structure that we're proposing, new pumping to take water from about two miles upstream from our existing plant, draw water from the Holston River, or actually the French Broad. Those are two independent water sources, and I'm sure most of you all have seen the news over the past few months. There's been a couple of very high-profile water contamination events that has occurred. So West Virginia, we had a man-made chemical get into the river up there. It got into their intake structure. It got into their plant. It got into their distribution system. It got to their customer's tap. Lots of boiled waters, lots of concern about drinking water for weeks up there. The other example is from the Great Lakes, Toledo, Ohio, where they had an algae bloom, a toxic algae bloom. I think it was in Lake Erie that impacted Toledo, Ohio, and they had to shut down their intake. And that area was out of water for several days. So, you know, that's real, and that's something that we need to be ready for. And because of, end of the day, our natural resources that are just here, we discovered in looking at this, we have this ability to take water from two independent sources. So to give you an idea of what that is, I don't know how well you can see that map from back there, but here's our existing water plant right there. So here's Island Home Airport. Here is the confluence of the Holston and the French Broad. We are recommending that we build an intake in that area there, put pipes on each side of that river, and give us the flexibility to draw water from where we need to. So if this branch got contaminated, we could pull water from here, or vice versa. Right now our intake is right here. So if this river is contaminated, you know, it trickles through no matter what. So actually a pretty neat situation for us in leveraging what's just naturally around us. So I think that's a really interesting part of this proposal. To get down to more of the brass tacks here, you'll see the proposed projects. $88 million that's currently not in plan is what we're targeting for this 15-year period. We've broken our approach up in roughly 3 phases, and again, our engineering team, they looked at these projects that they identified, and they have tried to sequence these, taking into account value for us, impact to the plant, actually getting our capabilities of this redundant firm capacity moving as quickly as possible. So phase 1, we work on some what we call high service transmission mains. Right now, our water is pushed out in front of the plant at Riverside Drive. This would give us some piping out through the new Riverside property to give us a second way to get water out of the plant. We're going to add a couple filters, which boosts our capabilities a little bit in terms of capacity and flexibility. We talked about improving those interconnects. We've still got some studies to do on that. We're hoping to be able to get get ourselves to maybe 6 to 8 million gallons of availability when we need to call on our neighbors. So that kind of culminates phase one. Phase two, we start actually working on the intake structure. You can see the magnitude of a couple of these projects, very unusual for us. So, you know, typically high dollars means high complexity, and so these are going to be tough projects, but carry high value at the same time. And once we get the intake kind of working, we're going to start working into plant proper. So that second project there gives us the capability to really move water around the plant and around those various process steps. And then phase three, we continue along that line. We make sure we have the pumping that we need. We're going to build a redundant high pumping service pump station to move water out to the distribution system. A new sedimentation basin. We currently have 3 of those. They do about 20 million gallons a day each. Very critical to our process. We're going to add a 4th one, and then we can use those 4 in various combinations as we see fit. And then last thing to do is add a couple more filters and some piping so we can leverage those filters as we need to. Couple footnotes here. We do have some money in the plan currently, about $13 million. That's going to flow out here in the next couple of years to put some emergency generators on site so that we can be ready when the grid's not there when we need it. And this will complete our circuit around our plants. Our wastewater plants already have those types of generators, so that'll keep us self-sufficient when we need to be. And then Susan mentioned the O&M costs. They're pretty incremental, really. So we're sort of targeting about $200,000 a year by leveraging this particular process versus 10 to 12 people having to be brought on board to operate a totally independent plant. So that's kind of the way the projects lay out and the magnitude of dollars. The last thing we have here today is what's left. We are in the process of looking at the funding for this project. We've done a couple scenarios on the financial plans and had some conversations. And we hope to bring that to you all early next calendar year for your consideration. I think one of the important things to note is in preliminary looks at this, we think, and Mark can correct me if I'm wrong, but we think we're at about a 50-cent impact, correct, on above and beyond the rate stuff you all endorsed and or approved now. And I think that would be outside of your current 3-year window.
Yeah, the rate increases that have already been adopted would not change. The next 3 years through 2017.
So we'll push a little bit out of that window there. So sometime early next year, we'll come see you again and we'll talk about the funding and financing of this. We're also working closely with the Smart Grid team and the workforce team to make sure this is the right fit for KUB in total. So you'll hear a bit more about that soon. That's what I have for today. So questions?